The movie begins in a dense forest. An old woman is shouting, "William, William." She's looking around as if she's searching for someone. Then, her eyes suddenly stop on something. She's terrified by what she sees in front of her, a dead body. A wolf is eating a human, and it's a full moon night. The scene cuts off there. Now we are in the present time. We see a little girl named Willow. She lives in a house in the woods, far from the city, with her family. Her family members all seem a bit strange. Willow has always felt something was off, but she didn't know what it was. Determined to find out, she secretly follows her parents. They are taking a mysterious animal in a cage into the forest. Before she can see what they're doing, Willow's grandfather arrives and takes her back, saying it's getting late. It's dangerous in the forest at night. The next morning, something bad happens in the forest. When Willow's mother comes back home, she can hardly walk, and her father is in such bad shape that her mother and grandfather have to help him to his room. Willow's grandfather tells her mother, "Imogen, look, this can't go on much longer." His words make Willow even more curious. She wonders what's really happening in her family. That night, Willow hears screams coming from her father's room, as if he's in severe pain. When she goes to check on him, he appears in a terrifying form and suddenly attacks her. Then Willow wakes up. It was just a nightmare. Later, she sees Imogen washing her father's coat, which is covered in blood. Unable to hold back anymore, Willow asks her mom, "Mom, what's happening here?" Imogen, caught off guard, says, "Nothing, dear. Everything's fine. Everything's normal." Willow realizes she has to find out the truth. She secretly listens to her parents' conversation. She hears her father telling Imogen, "I'm getting worse. Look at what I'm doing to you. You're suffering because of me." Imogen tries to comfort him, saying, "Just rest," and leaves the room. Willow keeps watching her father's room through a small hole. Suddenly, Willow's father notices her watching him, and she sees his frightening red eyes. Scared, she quickly goes back to her room, too terrified even to breathe properly. The next morning, she's so shaken that she has to wear an oxygen mask. Before her father wakes up, Imogen decides to take Willow into town. Willow, excited to visit the town for the first time in her life, can't hide her happiness. Her grandfather, who loves her more than anything, gives her some money to buy chocolates. A beautiful journey with her mother begins. After traveling a bit, her mother stops to change her clothes. Through the mirror, Willow notices several bruises on her mother's body. Her mom jokes with her, saying, "Don't tell anyone at home that I changed clothes on the way." Then she adds, "And today, I'll teach you how to drive." Willow's excitement doubles. In town, they run their errands, do a little shopping for Willow, and then head back home. As soon as they arrive, they're met by her father. He seems unusually calm when he notices Imogen took Willow shopping, but he quickly turns overly happy. He grabs the clothes they bought from Willow in an odd way, as if savoring their scent, and then puts his arms tightly around both of them. Leading them inside, he says with a strange intensity, "I love you both so much. Don't ever leave me." It didn't sound like a simple request, it felt more like a threat. Some time passes, and now it's another full moon night. We see Imogen packing an animal in the back of her car and setting off with Willow's father into the forest. Curious about what they're doing, Willow decides to follow them. She watches as Imogen leads her father deep into a cave. Once inside, Imogen ties him up and releases the animal from its cage. She then pulls down a large iron door at the entrance of the cave, locking him inside. As soon as Imogen heads back to the car, Willow quickly slips in through the door. Inside the cave, Willow peers through a small opening to see her father. If he found out she was there, what would happen? As she sneaks in, Imogen notices her and shouts, "Willow, don't go in. Stay back, there's danger inside." But Willow doesn't listen. Imogen rushes in after her, finally reaching her daughter. There, Willow sees something so terrifying that she faints from shock. Imogen quickly takes her home, putting an oxygen mask on her to help her breathe. So what did Willow see that made her lose consciousness? She witnessed her father transforming into a wolf. She saw his body changing, his muscles growing, his claws lengthening, his skin tearing as his teeth sharpened, turning him into a horrifying beast. The sight of her father's monstrous transformation was too much for her to handle. The next morning, the family is sitting around the breakfast table. Willow's father looks disturbed, almost wild, while Willow, still shaken by what she saw, remains silent. Imogen sits as if nothing happened, trying to keep things normal. Scared and confused, Willow goes to her grandfather. But soon her parents join them, beginning to argue with her grandfather, insisting that she must be sent away immediately. But her grandfather defends her, saying no, she's terrified, she's just scared. Just let her stay with me for a few days, Willow's grandfather pleaded. But her parents kept arguing, ignoring his words. Seeing them fight, Willow couldn't bear it any longer. She left her grandfather's house, went straight to the car, and drove back home on her own. When she got home, her emotions were a mess. In frustration, she tore apart the clothes her mom had bought for her. Late that night, her grandfather sneaked into her house and whispered to her, "Come with me. Staying here with your parents is dangerous." Willow, trusting him, decided to leave with him. But soon her father found out. Furious, he got into his car and went after them, determined to bring Willow back. This time, Imogen felt that her father might actually be trying to kidnap her daughter, and she confronted him, saying, "You're not welcome in my home anymore." She then closed the door firmly. Willow, however, felt even more lost and lonely now. Her grandfather had always been the one who understood her the most. To lift her mood, her father decided to take her to the very cave where she had seen him transform into a wolf. As they arrived at the cave, Willow was nervous, afraid her father might hurt her. But instead, he brought her here to reveal a truth he had kept hidden. He began to tell her a story about his own grandfather. His grandfather was a good man, but something strange happened to him every full moon. He would leave everything and run into the forest because he was a werewolf. Every full moon, he would transform into a wolf. To protect his family, he would go deep into the forest, away from everyone. Even his wife, Willow's great-grandmother, had no idea about his condition. One night, she decided to follow him to see where he went. When she saw his terrifying transformation, she fainted from the shock. At dawn, when her grandfather returned to his senses, he found that, in his wolf form, he had accidentally killed his own wife. The guilt and sorrow he felt after realizing what he'd done were unbearable. This was the scene we saw at the beginning of the movie, the old woman in the forest, screaming for William. That woman was his grandmother? Willow's father then admitted, "I am just like him. I'm also a werewolf." As he spoke, Willow's father grew very emotional. Seeing his pain, Willow couldn't hold back. She went over to him and hugged him tightly. They both returned home feeling lighter and happier. Imogen, Willow's mother, was there waiting for them. Seeing them happy, she too was overjoyed. She joined them, and the three of them lay down together, laughing and joking. Imogen looked at her husband and said, "You look so handsome when you're like this." The scene fades, and the next day, Willow's father takes her into the forest to chop wood. During their time together, he scolds her a little, and Willow gets scared. Noticing her fear, her father tries to cheer her up, calling her the princess of the forest. This lightens her mood, and he even lets her sit in the trunk of the car, giving her a sandwich to eat. He then heads to the front of the car to grab something else he brought for her. But unfortunately, he notices Imogen's dress, the same one she had worn when she changed in front of Willow. Seeing that dress, he becomes furious and questions Willow about it. When she doesn't respond, he angrily swats the sandwich out of her hands and drives her back home. Eventually, Willow's birthday arrives. To celebrate, Imogen bakes her a cake, and the mood in the house is light and happy again. Willow's birthday wouldn't have been complete without her grandfather. He arrived with a puppy in his arms as a gift, bringing a smile to Willow's face. The scene then fades, and after a long passage of time, we find ourselves on yet another full moon night. As usual, Imogen and her husband head towards the forest. However, something strange starts happening to Willow. One of her nails turns black, breaks off, and begins bleeding. She notices her nails are growing longer, her body is changing, and her teeth resemble those of a wolf. Right before fully transforming, she suddenly wakes up, realizing it was a nightmare. She's terrified, struggling to catch her breath. She crawls to grab her oxygen mask and takes it in gasps. After calming down, she goes to drink some water but hears a voice outside her door. Just as she's about to open it, her grandfather stops her. They learn that Imogen has returned home, leaving her husband in the forest alone under the full moon. concerned for Willow's safety, her grandfather takes her upstairs to keep her in a secure room. Meanwhile, Imogen takes a gun from her father. Willow, overhearing this, realizes that Imogen is planning to kill her husband. Panic overtakes her, and she faints. Hearing Willow fall, her grandfather and Imogen rush over. They try to give her oxygen, but the cylinder is empty. Imogen has to go to the basement to get another tank, despite the dangers outside. In a hurry to retrieve the oxygen, she accidentally drops the gun on the floor. Outside, her husband lurks, scraping at the door with a clawed hand. Annoyed and frustrated, Imogen yells, "Be quiet and go away," but upstairs, Willow's breathing is getting weaker. Her grandfather calls out desperately for Imogen to hurry. Imogen, grasping the urgency, abandons everything else and races upstairs with the oxygen cylinder. She quickly provides Willow with oxygen, who begins to breathe steadily again. However, an ominous noise from downstairs alerts them that someone or something has broken in. It could only be Willow's father in his werewolf form. Willow, still weak but determined, wanted to go downstairs with the gun, but she realizes that it's nowhere to be found. In that moment, her grandfather decides to go down alone, while Imogen hides with Willow inside a cupboard. As her grandfather descends, they hear a terrifying growl. Willow's father, enraged and transformed, grabs her grandfather with both hands and hurls him forcefully against the wall. The sharp antlers mounted on the wall pierce his body, leaving him gruesomely suspended. With fury in his eyes, the werewolf storms upstairs, intent on finding Imogen. She holds Willow close, covering her mouth to keep her quiet as they remain hidden in the cupboard, hoping he won't discover them. After sniffing around, her husband finally leaves the room, unable to sense their presence. Seizing the moment, Imogen sneaks out with Willow. She rushes her daughter to the car, instructing her with urgency, "If I'm not back in 2 minutes, drive away as far as you can and keep going until sunrise. I'm going back for your grandfather." Imogen closes the car door, her face a mixture of fear and determination, as she heads back to face whatever might await her inside the house. Imogen quickly rushes into the house, freeing her father from the wall's antlers. Despite his unbearable pain, she supports him, helping him down to the basement. Before they can leave, they hear the sounds of her husband prowling upstairs, still searching for them. Trying to remain silent, Imogen suddenly steps into a trap, causing her to cry out. Her husband, alerted by her voice, begins breaking through the floor above, trying to reach the basement. Acting swiftly, Imogen and her father make their way toward the basement exit, only to find it blocked by a barred gate. Outside, Willow, waiting anxiously in the car, notices her family's struggle. Using her quick thinking, she attaches a hook from the car to the bars and drives forward, pulling the gate open. Imogen rushes her injured father into the car, but as they prepare to escape, the engine won't start. Realizing there's no time, Imogen's father insists she take Willow and run, saying, "I'll handle this. Go now." Imogen reluctantly agrees, and they start running toward the forest. Suddenly, Willow is snatched from behind her father had been hiding in the woods, lying in wait. He carries her, unconscious with fear, back to his den in the forest. Imogen, hearing Willow's faint cries, runs after them, filled with dread. When she reaches the cave, she sees for the first time her husband fully transformed into a fearsome wolf, cradling an unconscious Willow. Desperate to save her daughter, Imogen decides to appeal to his humanity. She steps forward, her voice soft but firm, saying, "Listen to me, we're your family, and we love you deeply." The wolf freezes, and Imogen's words seem to resonate. Memories of happy moments with his family begin to flash through his mind, softening his rage. Gradually, he loosens his grip on Willow, and she slips gently from his grasp, safe once more. Willow moved away from the chaos and waited for her mother, hoping that she would return and everything would be okay. Meanwhile, her husband, who had turned into a wolf, started remembering some good moments. He thought back to when they were all lying together on the bed. Imogen, his wife, had told him that she loved him just the way he was. But as soon as he remembered this, his anger flared up, and he began to attack Imogen. Why did he suddenly get so angry? The reason was that even though everything seemed fine, nothing was truly perfect. Willow's husband wanted his wife to love him in both his human and wolf forms, but that wasn't enough for him. At one point, when he was about to hurt her, something happened. A hurricane lamp fell near Willow, and it started a fire. At the same time, Willow's oxygen mask fell off her face. Seeing the fire, Willow quickly came up with a plan to save her mother. She grabbed the oxygen tank and aimed it at her father, who was now the wolf. The oxygen made the fire burn even more, and her father was burned alive in the flames. With his death, Willow and Imogen were finally free from the terror they had been living in. In the final scene of the movie, we see Willow reading a book about wolves while her mother, Imogen, is packing to leave the house. Before they go, Willow looks back at the house and remembers all the painful moments when her father had tortured her and her mother. She remembers the last time when he was about to kill them both. In a flashback, we see that Willow's father was never really a wolf. He was just a psycho, a mentally disturbed man who enjoyed torturing his family. Throughout the movie, we saw him as a wolf because that's how Willow imagined him. In reality, he was just a madman, and now Willow and her mother are finally free from him. They can now start a new life free from the darkness he brought into their lives. The movie ends showing them moving on and beginning a new chapter.